welcome back to Mothers of Angels. I'll continue from where I left last time. After receiving the bad news, we left the hospital. Imagine you went to the hospital carrying your baby and now leaving the hospital empty-handed. I was still in a state of shock. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I was really in my own world. I felt so hopeless and helpless. I kept asking myself why this happened to me. Really, I was bleeding emotionally. This pain is indescribable, far much worse than any physical pain I've ever had before, more than the C-section. I totally forgot that I had had an operation 5 days before. A lot of friends and family came to support me. They had to remove me from the house because so many people were coming, so my parents were worried that things were really going to go bad with the way I was crying, considering I had an operation. So one of our friends took me to their house. I was supposed to be breastfeeding, so the milk kept coming out. You can imagine how I was feeling. The next day we had a funeral service for my daughter at Nyaradzo Funeral Parlor. When I got into the chapel and saw a very small white coffin in front, my heart broke. I just couldn't believe my daughter was in that casket. A service was held. After the service, I saw my daughter for the last time lying in that coffin. Will never forget that image. It was heartbreaking knowing that it was the last time I was seeing her and I would never see her again in this life. I broke down and cried. I remember going to my dad and hugging him, saying these words to him, "Mwana wangu Kani," meaning my daughter. Why? Honestly, then I was asking myself, why did she have to die? We went and buried her at Warren Hill Cemetery. I was shocked to see many people who had come to attend the burial. I'm forever grateful for everyone who supported during that time. Though I was in so much pain, it really felt comforting knowing that there are other people who had come to be there for me. We buried her on the 11th of August, 2005. I do not wish anyone to go through this experience in life. It is so painful. For so many days and months, I could not sleep. Every day I would think of my daughter. I was trying to understand why it had happened. Everything didn't make sense to me. I was also trying to understand what had really killed her. Some babies had jaundice before, but they survived. Also, the doctor had said she had healed from jaundice. So I was wondering why she had to die in the end. Many things were coming to my mind every day. Who can explain death? No one in this world can. When you suffer loss, the pain is overwhelming. Like everyone else who have lost a loved one, I went through the grieving process. Whenever someone loses a loved one, they go through this grieving process, and it's very normal for people to grieve. I know everyone mourns in their own way, and everyone carries their pain differently, but we all go through the grieving process. It is very important to allow people to grieve for their loved ones. I've heard some people say, "Oh, be quiet, be strong." For someone who would have lost a loved one, personally, I don't think those words are relevant. How can someone be strong if they've just lost someone they love? One of the most difficult things to accept about grief is that it is difficult, and the stages associated with it vary significantly from person to person. Mourning is an intimate and unique experience for each of us. There is no manual on how to cope with loss, and certainly no right or wrong way to go through the stages of grief. that might come from it. A mother who loses an infant goes through the same grieving process like everyone else who loses a loved one. People often have a tendency of comparing grief. The mother who loses a 5-year-old is expected to grieve harder than the woman who loses an infant, like me. But I've come to realize that grief is grief for everyone who loses a loved one. I also lost my brother 4 years ago, just 2 years after losing my daughter. It was indeed a tough period for me and my family. We had to go through the grieving process again. Emotions associated with death and dying can range from anger to sadness. The symptoms can last for weeks and months or even a year or longer. If you are dealing with loss, it is important to understand that it is normal to have good days and bad days. It's normal to feel like your mood fluctuates from time to time throughout the stages, as we will discuss in more detail in the next episode. There are stages of grief that bereaved people usually experience. Your feelings are valid and you have a right to grieve. I will share with you the stages of grief in my next episodes, and I'll be relating them to my personal experience. Bye for now.